welcome to the Virtually Speaking podcast, coverage of VMUG Connect in Minneapolis. John, how you doing, bud?
Good. I've got my VMUG hat on. You know, I'm ready for Have Hat Will Travel.
Is that your VMUG hat? I've seen it before, a VMUG.
I've got a couple hats actually, but we may bring some surprise hats out depending on where the
Man of many
conversation
hats.
goes.
Absolutely. Well, John, the thing I love about VMUG, we always talk about this, but coming to events like Explore is great, but VMUGs is great because there's a ton of practitioners here. There's a ton of partners. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of activity, a lot of people talking about different things. Really nerding out, like really fun stuff. And so we're bringing on two folks that have been in the community a long time. Some folks I'm sure will recognize some of these names if you read blogs or if you have ever been to a hackathon. Let's start with Dale. Dale, welcome back to the podcast, Hackathon Champion of 2025.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me back again. I always enjoy these podcasts, and to be joined by somebody like you said I've known for a long time, it'll be a nice experience.
Absolutely, yeah. Also joining you for this conversation is no stranger to the VMware community, Broc Peterson. Broc, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. First time today. I'm actually a little nervous sitting next to John here with this cowboy hat on. I was hoping I had one myself. So when you walked in, I was like, awesome, virtually speaking is here.
We'll be handing out hats soon. So,
so thanks for having us.
Yeah, no, thanks for joining us. So this is a community episode. Like this week, we've been talking to a lot of folks about community in general. And so, Dale, we had a conversation that I thought was worth repeating, like career progression. A lot of folks come to these events for, learning how to do public speaking for the very first time, or learning just how to network with their environment, learning, we just came out of a great Ask Me Anything session where people are just really engaged and learning how to be better at their jobs. And before you came to Broadcom, I think you had a similar experience. Maybe you can start us off with that.
Sure. I would start attending VMUG events as a customer, sitting in the back row, afraid to speak up, afraid to even share what I did. And then over time, like when I would go to Explore, there was a couple presenters that I've always tried to go to their sessions, like William Lambs or Alan Renouf. There were people, because I was into automation, I just really enjoyed those sessions. And I would just sit there and think, someday I want to do this. And eventually I got asked to talk about what I did with automation where I worked as a customer, and that kind of sparked my interest. And then after that, I started blogging and doing more with VMUG. And then eventually, I got a session at Explore, did the community theater a couple times. And then, we met because of the hackathon last year.
Yeah.
Hackathon team captain gets you very involved with the community. I love the hackathons. I think they're just a lot of fun.
And I want to even talk about that more because they have evolved, especially with the introduction of AI and some of the really cool things you can do. But before we get even into that conversation, let's talk about how you actually came to be part of Broadcom.
So as a customer, being involved with the community, I really feel is how I got to be here today as a Broadcom employee. Sharing what I did. Managers and stuff at Broadcom started to see things that I was writing about and speaking about, and I came to VMware as a TAM for a year, and then after I was in the TAM role for a year, my goal was to be an ARIA specialist, and I got to join a team that was an ARIA specialist, and I got to be on Broc's team. We were together for 2 years. I covered the southeast and then the northeast for 2 years, and it was just a great team.
Nice.
I like the part of the story because it's interesting. Everybody gets into blogging or speaking at conferences and things like that, or their local VMUGs, and that they get to it because they love the technology, they love the game. But it is kind of like your resume in public. Someone reached out to me because of blogging, that I had done is why I ended up, Duncan Epping slid into my DMs on Twitter and was like, hey, I see this blogs, I see you've been following vSAN, like there's a role open. So it is kind of interesting to think about it. This is a way, much better than LinkedIn to put your resume out there, is to be generating this content.
I look at my blog as a living resume, probably.
Yeah.
People can say, hey, I can do this. But if you say I can do this and you write about it and share it and help people, share it with the community. And when people reach out to me about something I blog, in Europe somewhere, and say, hey, I put this in production, that's a good feeling.
Yeah.
I mean,
when you're writing it, it doesn't feel, you're like, no one's gonna read this. Like, you run into some like quirk, you're like, oh, here's this cool thing. You throw out 200 words and 3 screenshots. And you're like, I'm never gonna see her from this again. And then
Dale and I talk about this all the time, where we will write, or he'll write a blog, or I'll write a blog, and it can be just the oddest topic, right? Like, there might be 10 or 12 people that are interested in this, and that blog will skyrocket. Whereas we're talking about something that should be sort of ubiquitous, that every customer is using, and it doesn't quite take off as well, right? So I think
the more niche topics, actually, they do better, because
for sure
you're
they do
more likely
better.
to be the only person who's written. I wrote like a specific thing about boot devices, right? Or like this one flag, and I look at my stats, I'm like, wow, this was weirdly popular.
I just did one last week around using Claude for Operation Supermetrics, right? I hadn't really engaged much with Claude yet. I'm like, all right, this is a great use case for it. And that blog has taken off. I thought there might be 2 or 3 folks that are interested in it, but I think to your original point about blogging, it being kind of a public CV of sorts, but also it gives you the ability to give content or use cases to customers.
Yeah.
That's why I blog. That's why I started reading Dale's blog, and that's why ultimately I recommended him to be a part of our team when we had an opening on it, because he had so much public content out there that was really valuable to customers.
Yeah.
Yeah, since VMUG is community driven and people have home labs, the most read blog I ever wrote was when I wrote about my home lab. And I put the bill of materials and said, here's my server, here's my storage, here's what I'm doing. That got twice as many as any other blog I ever wrote.
I think the image helped as well.
Oh, yeah.
You had a really cool image on there, and people loved to see the
It was an
hardware.
image of I have a mini rack with those mini forums, and I took a picture of it, and that just got people's attention.
The mini forums are hot right now. I was actually talking to someone who was 3D printing a custom like blade chassis. They were stripping the motherboards out. Like, the weird hardware is hot again. Like, it used to be, okay, we got some like awfully servers that like were really loud, and then we got to like, oh, let's do Nooks, but those are kind of small, and like the mini forum is definitely
I've been very happy. If anybody in the VMUG community would be looking to do a home lab, it's a good starting point. And I know William Lamb has some blogs out there, if that's something that interests people. He shows how to run VCF on a single mini farm.
So blogging has been around for a while. I remember, I got into this career field by some of the greats, going on the shoulders of giants, if you will, just learning like the Von Stewarts and the Chad Sackages, if you will, just learning, storage back in the day. And
I feel like blogs used to be spicier. There used to be like blog versus blog arguments between people in different companies.
Yeah,
like
there were. Now they happen on Twitter, but
everybody loves a good twit piss. But no, it's.
Oh, I follow you, John. I see your tweets.
Just ignore anything that I tweet after 1 a.m.
But Broc, you probably have the most cadence of the 4 of us at this table. So like, what is it for you? How do you keep up that cadence? And
yeah, it's sort of a passion. When I was, it was 2018, I think. I was at Blue Medora at the time. So if you remember Blue Medora, it was a small startup that built management packs for VCF operations.
I remember Blue Medora.
Or vRealize operations at the time. And I was on my way to Barcelona for VMUG Europe, and I was bored. So I fired up a blog, and I started blogging about the Blue Medora stuff at the time. And it's just kind of steamrolled, right? And it's gained a readership that folks are interested in. So, I try to, like you said, blogs have been around for a while. It's not a new idea. It's not a new concept. But active blogs, there aren't as many of those as you might think, right?
Yeah.
Folks that are producing content that customers can actually use. So that's what I try to do. And, I primarily focus on operations and automation and logs. John and I were just talking about logs yesterday. It's a very favorite product at VMware.
If vSAN ceased to exist, I would be like, okay, where's the old log insight? Where's logs?
Yeah,
I will be blogging and tweeting. If you have anything broken in your data center, it will find it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, just producing content, and when customers reach out, they read those blogs and they reach out to you on LinkedIn. I know Dale has this happen. I probably get an email per week or a DM per week in LinkedIn saying, hey, thanks for this. Can I do it this way?
yeah.
Like, that's really rewarding. And I'm more of a carrot person than versus the stick, and that just makes me want to write more blogs. So that's why I do it.
One thing I like about blogs, and I'm saying this somewhat ironically because this will get posted on YouTube, is I feel like a lot of content creation has gone to like video and longer form. And what I loved about blogging is really people just, one, they did it for the love of the game, so to speak. Some people have ads in their blogs, but that was never the driving force. But it was like you get 200 words out there, not even, sometimes 100 words of like, hey, here's this feature, here's 3 screenshots, go. I love how you could find it, you could interact with it, and you could move on with your life very quickly. I feel like everything is turned into, it needs to be an 18-minute video so it can post 2 YouTube ads, and it makes me want to throw things at my monitor.
Same, right? I mean, some of my blogs are KBs. I mean, they're fancy KBs, right?
It's a KB where I can use swear words.
Yeah, with maybe a screenshot. But I'm with you. In fact, at one point I did have ads in my blog. Wasn't well received. I didn't like it, so I just took them all down.
Yeah.
I think
ads either.
the short form blogs are really, really valuable. It's just kind of an enhancement of documentation.
It's becoming the training material for
sure.
For
it is. Yeah.
Yeah, on the topic of AI, I know that you've been using a lot of AI. Certainly in the hackathon, we talked about that last year. For folks that are listening, go back. I'll leave a link to that episode in the show notes of the podcast. But Dale, what do you think of all the changes that have been happening in the AI space, and how do you think that would affect your role as an operations person?
If I had AI when I was a customer, and I could feed it some PDF files of like I was probably an early adopter of SaltStack, so writing state files and stuff wasn't something that people would blog about, or there wasn't a lot of information. So to figure that out was a lot harder. If I could feed that information into a chat and say, hey, I want to write a state file to make sure these services are running, or to make sure this agent is there, it would be so much easier today.
I feel like it's helping. Sorry, I just switched.
Do you want to mention your hat change?
Well, we're talking about AI, and I wanted to put on my agentic AI hat, my OpenClaw hat here. But the thing to think about this that's kind of intriguing for me is I feel like there's a lot of sysadmins who they learned in clicky vCenter Windows environments, and there's this transition towards this sysadmin type role being more like an SRE type role, being dangerously enough at some type of scripting language, and one of the things that was often, I feel like, a roadblock for a lot of people was learning the syntax or just troubleshooting. It was the learning curve on, when you're walking into a new scripting framework or a language, or just trying to figure out your YAML, file, or your SALT, descriptions.
Proper spacing.
Yeah, and it is actually nice having like AI to help you with that. And so I think it's making some of these automation frameworks that you talk about, I think I'm kind of excited for the new kids because they're coming in here and they're not having to bang their teeth on tabs versus spaces or whatever.
Yeah, I think it's more than nice. I think it's kind of game changing, right? You're not going to worry much about the syntax of YAML anymore.
Yeah.
Right? You're going to put it into Claude or whatever you're using, and it's going to tell you where your problem is.
Right.
I just published a blog around Operation Supermetrics and how I used Claude to create those. Within 2 prompts, it recognized what it might have been doing wrong and gave me perfect syntax. Perfect cut and paste syntax into operations. Automation will have the same use cases. YAML's the perfect use case.
Here's the
for this,
documentation.
right?
Here's the Swagger endpoint.
Exactly.
Like, go figure this out.
Right. So folks writing 100-line YAML blueprints. You might have a blueprint that you can just put into Claude. It'll tell you where to make adjustments,
I wanna change
where your
this,
problems
what
are.
do.
If you want to change an input value, for example, Claude will help you with that.
Well, this reminds me of going back to logs, because logs is the second greatest product ever.
Of course.
But one of the things that I loved about logs was I was terrible at writing regex. Yeah. And it had that feature, you just highlight and you say extract, and it went and did a pretty good machine learning guess at the at the regex, and suddenly a huge barrier to me being competent at finding things in logs is I'm not having to grep and use regex like a caveman. I'm just extract field, go. And I feel like we're getting that level of ease of intro to everybody, across all the products, especially ops.
We are, for sure. And I think there are some things on roadmaps that are potentially coming, and we might discuss down the road. But you probably had some sort of regex editor bookmarked where you would do your things, and you can do that in logs. Agentic AI and the integrations with AI and ops, auto, and logs, and all the products is going to give us that kind of within the ecosystem itself.
Yeah. John, have you seen what Dale's been building using AI? It wasn't OpenClaw, but if you want to wear the OpenClaw hat to explain some of your apps, have you seen some of the apps that he's created on his phone?
No.
Really?
You're running a local model on your phone?
I am running a local model, but I wrote some native Apple apps
Oh, cool.
on my phone. Never wrote a line of Swift in my life, and when Apple released Xcode that you could connect it to Claude Code, I sat down on a Friday night and I'm like, hey, I want to have this app that runs on my iPhone. I want it to look like a native app, so I took a screenshot of reminders and I said I want it to look like this. And then I had existing PowerShell scripts that would connect to vCenter and ops and pull information. So I wanted it to, show me information about my VMs and stuff natively. And I'd say within one day, I had a working app that.
Wow. Because not knowing any Swift or not
No-
caring to
no
learn.
Swift.
So yeah, I mean,
He's vibe coding and basically having a mobile version of vCenter in his pocket that he can
This
check.
is why he's the hackathon winner.
Oh, yeah.
and likely incumbent again this year.
And because I had my MCP code, if I could feed existing code that worked but said, hey, convert this to Swift, it did a really good job. So I've probably completely prompted like 4 complete apps now. Like today, I'm doing some presentations here at Connect. In operations, you can have dashboards rotate, which is great for Knox. Well, I wanted to show dashboards plus a little advertisement for my blog. And I include a little advertisement for Broc's blog. It says, hey, go to this blog. So
this is like blog rings, bringing it back.
So I went into Claude and said, I described what I wanted to do. I wanted to reach out to a live website, pull it in, display it full screen. I wanted to set the order. I wanted to set how much time it would display, and it would just keep rotating. So at the beginning of my session, I had my iPad plugged in, and on the big screen, I was going through some live dashboards. Talk about a big knock. It was reaching back to my home lab in Pennsylvania, pulling in these live dashboards and showing it, all because of an app that I was able to prompt. And there wasn't anything available in the market that I was aware of. There may be, but it's also teaching me how to learn to prompt. And
We'll vibe code faster than we'll find an existing app that does it. There you go. So.
Can you configure it to scrub all of the Virtually Speaking podcast episodes? And if there's anything related to the logs, it can embed maybe an interview that can help folks?
we could probably come up with something.
I need to get a voice transcription model that crawls them all, and do metadata. Actually, here's what we need to build. We need to build an app that will go crawl them and do metadata for every reference to every product, so we can have a front end.
To go with John and my hat here, OpenClaw was a big news, maybe a month, 2 months ago. So I actually I dedicated a Mac Mini in my home lab to run OpenClaw. And some use cases, if you're a VMUG user and you have a home lab, is using my MCP technology that I created the hackathon a little bit, I created these, they call them skills in OpenClaw, that just reaches in and says, show me all my hosts where the CPU usage is above, 90%, and it would email me a report. Or show me all my VMs that have snapshots, and it would email. And you can put it on a schedule. So instead of writing scripts, you're creating these simple little prompts that are more, wrote in English, and creating these skills. And I can even say, hey, schedule this to run at 6 a.m., and it does all that work for me.
This reminds me of the Alan Renouf app that he created in PowerShell many moons ago. What was that called? That daily...
the VCheck daily.
VCheck, yes.
Yeah, this is like the modern version of VCheck.
To
With
be
a
fair,
splash of
Claude
AI.
probably went and found VCheck and copied.
Yeah, by the way,
code.
VCheck is still there. I still see customers that are running it.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So let's close on this. There's a lot of folks that have come here to actually learn. They come to network. They're trying to, whether they're looking for career progression or even just trying to get into this career. You've been in it for a while.
Yeah.
What recommendation do you have for folks?
The recommendation is just do it. So we as engineers, well, maybe not y'all, or certainly not John, tend to be a little bit more introverted, maybe, right? And
John the introvert,
yeah, and events like this with a lot of folks and maybe some public speaking involved can be a little intimidating.
Sure.
Just do it, right? Just go, make yourself uncomfortable, go to a VMUG, present at the VMUG. If it's just 5 or 10 minutes, so be it. No big deal, nobody cares, right? The community is about just that. It's about the community, it's about the technology, it's about the people, it's about how we can work together to solve problems. So I think it's really easy to maybe push something off or say, I'll do this next time, or I'll do it next month, or maybe next VMware Explore I'll speak. Just do it.
Yeah, I like that. And Dale, slightly similar question, but with a little bit of a spin. From a technical perspective, folks looking into whether it's AI or even in the VMware by Broadcom space, what recommendations do you have for folks that are trying to advance their careers?
Just try to think of things to automate in your daily life, with checking emails or checking, like with my OpenClaw, it goes out and shows me the weather every day. It shows me I have it that it sends me a inspirational quote every morning. So when I wake up, it just says, hey, here's a little quote. It's something that I love including good quotes in my blogs. So every day it goes out and generates, I don't even tell it where to go, and it generates this quote and sends it to me every morning.
1 billion tokens was spent finding the best quote. So.
Yeah. The community stuff. Yeah, like Broc said, go to VMUGs. I'm doing a presentation here at the Connect in Minneapolis on my career path and how to get started. And one thing I'm going to offer people, and I'll do the same thing here. If you want to write a blog, but you don't want to start your own, but you have a topic, reach out to me, and I will let you be a guest blogger on my blog site. So I already have an audience of people, probably every month I think it's 10,000 or more views. So, and I would promote them and just say, hey, here's a blog you wrote. Look how many hits you got. And I think when people would write their first one and kind of get that feedback.
That dopamine hit of like...
That's exactly what it is.
It would
too,
spark
right?
an interest and to share ideas. So that's a great way to get started too, and I would be willing to help people do that.
So I think part of the community, the main part of the community for me is sharing.
Yeah.
Sharing knowledge, sharing content, sharing use cases. It's literally how Dale and I met, right? So when Dale was a customer, I was on a call, and then we started doing power blocks together. And then he presented this just amazing operations dashboard that I was in love with. I reached out to him immediately. He gave me the content. I took it and I riffed on that 4, 5, 6 different versions. I have all sorts of customers that use that dashboard to right-size VMs, for example, all from just some community engagement with a customer who's now a VMware Broadcom employee. So that's the power of the community.
That's the secret sauce. I love it.
Yeah.
Love it. Dale, Broc, thanks for joining us here at this VMUG Connect in Minneapolis, and I look forward to having you guys back on the podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you.